Welcome, everybody. As Alison said, my name's Dave Jones, and I'm VP of Product Evangelism at Nuxio. And I'll be joined on today's webinar by Derek DeLeo, who's our VP of Solution Consulting. And really, we're both delighted to be talking to you today about how to get the best out of your next digital transformation RFP. One of the things that we're very conscious of is that the days of modernizing information systems by replacing like for like have really gone. You really don't get the best value from just doing what you've always done with newer versions, with new kit. Technology has got much more to offer today than ever before, and we really need to start making use of it. But how can your next RFP reflect that? And how can you use that RFP to drive the best possible outcomes? Well, that's what we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or so discussing. And to do that, we've broken the session down into 4 parts. I'm going to do some very quick introductions into both Derek and myself, and then really take a quick look at the state of digital transformation today, really to define if it is working at all and how that affects what you need to include in your RFP. After that, Derek and I will jointly share the 10 critical elements that you all really should be looking to include in your RFPs in some way. All right, so some very quick introductions. As I've already mentioned, my name's Dave Jones, and I've spent the past 20 years or so working with technologies such as analytics, cloud, enterprise content management, across a wide range of vertical industries. I also had the pleasure of running my own ECM organization in the early 2000s. And more recently, I've held global market analyst and product marketing roles with AIM and with Highland, respectively, before joining Nuxio. And as of late last year, I've also had the pleasure and the joy of being voted onto the AIM board of directors. My co-presenter today is Derek DeLeo. Derek's an experienced executive and leader with a demonstrated history of working in the information technology and services industry, and that includes over 14 years working with IBM. He's got a fantastic consulting background and is skilled in a lot of areas, things like enterprise content management, content services, business process, requirements analysis, enterprise software, and enterprise architecture, to name but a few. Okay, so now that you know who we are, let's start diving into the meat of the conversation. And that really is to start looking at digital transformation. And firstly, I want to talk about what digital transformation is a little bit. And really, it's something that we've all talked about and we've been talking about for a long time. But is it working? Are we actually seeing value from digital transformation within our organizations? The first thing that I want to raise is that we're certainly spending a lot of money on it. And we're looking specifically at financial services as a vertical here, but the numbers are pretty similar across the board. And in 2018, financial services organizations spent, on average, $42 million each on digital transformation. And that number is expected to go up to $45 million this year. What are they spending it on? Well, 2/3 of the projects are so-called customer-facing innovations. So things like customer experience and engagement, new websites, mobile apps, chatbots, and so on and so forth. And you can sort of understand why if you think about it. This is the visible side of IT. This is the visible side of digital transformation and how you interact with your customers. So it makes absolute sense to focus there, right? Well, apparently not. That same research showed that 88% of the digital transformation projects that people start don't complete as planned. They're either delayed, they end up with reduced scope, or they're cancelled altogether. So that's almost 9 out of 10 projects that don't go according to script. And this is so damaging that a quarter of all organizations now feel that digital transformation is quite simply an unsurmountable task, something that can actually never be delivered. So to explore why these projects are failing, I quickly want to bring Derek into the conversation. Derek, you want to take us through why some of these projects just aren't delivering as we think they should be?
Happy to, Mr. Jones. So why exactly are they failing? Well, there's lots of reasons why they're failing, but to quote my friend and colleague and co-presenter today, it really comes down to the fact that in order to be successful in a digital transformation initiative, you really need to have a solid platform in place to work from so that you can build out on a solid foundation. And as Dave describes it, it's kind of like trying to build a house on sand if you don't have that solid platform. The house is going to end up being a messy heap very quickly. So let's talk about the 10 critical requirements that you need to include in your next digital transformation so that you do have that solid foundation to build on and so that your digital transformation can be successful. So I'll start with our first. Do you need a product or a platform? Products are typically rather restrictive in configurability. They have very limited capabilities to configure it to do something different than what it was intended for. Typically, they're intended to solve a very specific problem. So they're basically an out-of-the-box tool, whereas a platform is usually very highly configurable and infinitely customizable so that it solves many problems with one single multi-purpose environment. And that gives you that solid foundation on which you can build all of your applications. Second, you should think about federated access. Most organizations, and in fact, out of the 20 plus years that I've been in the ECM business, I would say almost every organization I've talked to has content all over the place, whether it's in multiple ECM systems, file shares, or sync and share systems like Box or Dropbox. It's all over the place. Before you can really leverage that content, you need to be able to access it no matter where it is. And rip and replace isn't always the best approach. It's costly and it takes a long time. You want to reap the benefits of a solid foundation as quickly as possible. So by providing federated access to those disparate systems, you can extend the life of your initial investment. You can more quickly integrate to applications that you're using for other purposes within your organization. And yes, you can get that single view of all of the information about your consumers, your users, your products by federating. It also allows you to migrate intelligently and at your pace, because if it's a good federated solution, it will let you migrate as people access content, and it'll allow you to use that federated access to define very logical patterns by which to do a migration in methodical stages. For the next one, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Jones.
Thanks, Derek. So on to number 3 in our list. Does your proposed solution manage content and data? Well, it seems like a pretty silly question, right? But if you look at most of our systems today, they tend to focus either on managing content or they focus on managing data, not really ever both. So what you end up with is customer data in your CRM system, for example, and customer content or the customer documents in an ECM system. Why? Well, who knows? The simple recommendation here is that what you need to do moving forward is look at systems that can actually manage both in the same place, treat them as equals, and deliver solutions and applications that can deliver content and data at the same time with the same weight. So on to point 4. Artificial intelligence. You knew it had to be in the presentation somewhere. Everyone's talking about AI. But what do you really need from artificial intelligence? And how can you include it sensibly in your RFP? Well, the first thing is that any AI that you decide to use needs to be easy to use. If it's not, or if you need to hire a data scientist to use it, then unless you've got one on staff already, you're failing pretty much straight away. Secondly, you need to be able to build models on your data. Now, that, again, might sound overly simplistic, but if you dig into a lot of the commercially available AI tools and look at them in detail, they tend to use aggregated public data, not yours. What that means is that they're very easy to use because you literally pass your data at it and get a result back. But the results that you're getting back are based on publicly trained data, not on your specific information. Next up, any artificial intelligence models need to actually integrate to the rest of your business. They can't be standalone entities. So AI needs to be driven by and interact with all of the processes, the content, the documents, the workflows, the user interfaces, the custom solutions that you already have. It's pointless if they don't. Now, the nice thing is if you get all of those pieces right, if you tie all of those together, then what you'll see is a very rapid return on investment from AI. And one of the little tips here is that when you're crafting your RFP, don't be shy about asking vendors what sort of RFP you can expect from their AI capabilities and what sort of ROI they've seen delivered through other customers as well. Make sure to include that in your RFP. Okay, Derek, back over to yourself for content and rich media.
So it's important that whatever system you choose, whatever platform you choose, it should be able to handle all forms of content, whether it's text documents, presentations, videos, high-res images. They should all be handled the same. It should be native within the platform. And it's not just because you might be in the marketing business and therefore you have a lot of rich media. Rich media is becoming more and more important in many industries, including, of course, in the insurance industry, but also in the healthcare industry, where videos of surgeries, where high-res images from medical devices are important for the end user, whether it's an adjuster or a doctor, to be able to see that information in its rich media form, not have to launch a separate tool to view it. Rich media is used as video evidence in call centers. We're capturing conversations over the phone. Those conversations can not only be important as follow-up, but they can be important to learn from those conversations and help others avoid situations that might have been discussed in those conversations. So a platform that can handle all forms of content is very, very important to be able to really enable a digital transformation. Next, low code. This is becoming another buzzword, kind of like AI, but it's very meaningful. Most organizations have a lot of applications that have been built over time, and those applications were typically custom developed and talk to perhaps one, at most two systems. But now you need those applications to be modernized. You need to provide more capabilities to your end users. And in many cases, you need them to talk to many different systems. That's hard to do with some of those legacy systems that you might have in place. But if your platform supports low code, meaning I can point and click or drag and drop to create a custom application quickly, prototype it, test it, and deploy it, then I've won. I can deliver new capabilities faster. I can modernize my application for my end users quicker. I can delight my customers by providing more at their fingertips through a modern application, whether that's a browser-based application or a mobile device-based application, or both. If your platform supports low code, you can do it rapidly and effectively. It's an important requirement now. Moving to number 7, Dave.
Thanks, Derek. Some great points there. And I just want to pause for a second and remind all of you listening that we have a Q&A section at the end of this. Some great questions coming in, but I'd encourage you to ask questions. Do you agree with the points that we're talking about? Do you have any further questions? Are we not explaining things in enough detail? Feel free to send us those questions in, and as I say, we'll do our best to get through all of those. So, point 7, I love this point. It talks about scale, which is one of my favorite topics. And if you think about it, most organizations are looking to grow. Most organizations are looking to scale their business. But how many organizations think about that proactively when they're crafting an RFP? And what does it even mean from a digital transformation or a content services or an information management perspective? Well, there's a number of architectural elements that allow information management systems to be able to scale. You don't need all of them in a solution to be able to provide scale, but the more of them that you have, the more scalability you get as a result. So, some things that you need to be asking for. Ideally, an open architecture, or what I mean by that is an architecture that can connect via application programmer interfaces, or so-called APIs, to other systems, but also that can be connected to from other systems. We live now in a world and an environment from an IT perspective where it's more about creating an ecosystem of connected solutions and applications than trying to find that one killer app that can do everything for you. I think we've all gotten over that and realized that this ecosystem approach, this best of breed component approach, is one that serves us much, much better. Secondly, you need the individual modules within your solution to be able to scale independently. Now, that's in the industry, that's called horizontal scaling. And what it means is that, for example, if you're doing a bulk import of content, that ingestion module can scale to cope with that load without affecting the user interface, for example, or the mobile app, or other modules within the system. It scales independently, and each of those components can scale independently. You should also be looking for the solution to be delivered via something called containerization. We don't have enough time, unfortunately, to go into what containerization is in detail in this session, but this is a simple, reliable, repeatable way of deploying software very, very quickly today. And your solution needs that. And finally, your solution should be able to scale intelligently, dynamically, and elastically. And essentially what I'm talking about, this is a combination of all of the above, allowing your solutions to adapt and react to your ever-changing business environment and your ever-changing user needs, all without you having to install more servers or install more software. All of this should be able to happen intelligently. And one thing that I really didn't mention on the previous slide, although I could have done, was the way that the cloud plays into scalability. And at Nuxio, we deliver software that is what we call cloud native. What that means is that the solution, the application, is built using a cloud-ready architecture, an architecture that's been designed using the same principles as cloud systems. What it doesn't mean, and does definitely not mean, is that the solution has to run or can only run in the cloud. And what this provides organizations with is the ability to get all of the benefits that we talked about on the previous slide, and to get those benefits whether you're deployed on-premise, in the cloud, or in a hybrid environment. And more importantly, it also gives them flexibility, and flexibility for the future. If an organization wants, for whatever reason, to be on-premise today, that's absolutely fine. But by using a cloud-native solution, should they decide that they want to move to the cloud in the future, they can do it easily. By contrast, moving a non-cloud-native solution to the cloud at a later date is not such a straightforward task. So, put simply, point 8 in your RFP should ensure that the proposed solution is capable of being delivered in the cloud as and when you're ready to do it. Derek, back over to you for the next one.
And continuous innovation is an interesting concept. We all want to innovate, and we all want to do it rapidly. And how do you do that with applications built on a platform? Well, this goes back to what Dave was just talking about, cloud-ready or cloud-native solutions. Continuous innovation in the cloud means we can deliver updates immediately. New features, new capabilities can be developed, prototyped, tested, and deployed and made available to consumers in the cloud immediately. You don't have to wait a year to get a major release of software from your vendor. It can be delivered when it's ready. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to use it right away. You can decide to consume it at your pace. And if it's delivered appropriately, it also doesn't mean that it completely disrupts your application. It should be frictionless. So those new features and potentially bug fixes should be deployed in a manner that doesn't disrupt your users and doesn't disrupt your systems. That's not easy to do, and if your solution is not a cloud-ready solution, chances are it can't do that. We've all experienced situations where in order to get new features in software, we have to take our systems down, which means downtime for your applications, update those systems, which often takes hours, then restart everything, do a quick test to make sure nothing has been broken, and then reopen your applications. This effort is typically done late at night when you have few users on the system, and oftentimes when they come back in that next morning, something's wrong. But if it's done effectively and you embrace continuous innovation and delivery, it can be done without disruption to the end users. So they can keep working. The next time they log into their browser-based application, they'll see those new capabilities. They could see those changed workflows without any effort. That's what continuous innovation is really all about. And last, number 10, modern solutions should take an API-first approach. API-first can be confusing to some. Very simply, it means that the solution you select, the user interfaces from those solutions should use only open, published, fully documented APIs in order to deliver capabilities. If an application or a UI that's delivered by a vendor makes calls through proprietary APIs directly to back-end systems, then for you to modify anything related to that application becomes insurmountable. If those UIs are built on the published documented APIs from that vendor, that's API-first approach. And that means that all solutions supported by that application are readily available via APIs so that you can develop your applications using the UIs that are provided or building your own UIs. It's very important when you're looking at modernizing applications that you think about an API-first approach from your vendors. Now I'll move on back to Dave.
Thank you, Derek. And that was a whistle-stop tour through the top 10 things that your next digital transformation RFP should include. I hope you're still with us. I can see questions continually coming in, so I'm pretty sure you are still with us. And as I said, we'll be sharing an ebook version of that list with you after the event. But before we go into the Q&A, I just want to try and summarize at a very high level what we've talked about so far. And really what we're saying is three things. And first up for me, it's an old saying, but don't try and repave the cow path. What I mean by that is that trying to replace your old systems purely with modern equivalents, with modern versions of the same thing, delivers very little benefit. In my opinion, it makes sense to look beyond that replacement mentality to try and find a solution that can not only deliver what you need today, but also what you need tomorrow and into the future. Secondly, as Derek mentioned earlier, to do digital transformation properly, or in fact to do digital transformation at all, you need a solid foundation to build on. You need that platform combined with things like low-code capabilities and scalability and an API-first approach. And you need all of those to allow you as an organization to rapidly innovate and deliver solutions that solve the real-world business problems that you have. And I mentioned it earlier, but we've moved away from the mentality that there will be one system to rule them all, one system that can do everything you would possibly need within your organization. The reality is we're looking at lots of different applications, lots of different systems, and building them all on the same platform and delivering digital transformation from that single core platform is fundamentally the strongest way to move forward. And finally, and you might find this surprising coming from a vendor, but my recommendation would be that you challenge vendors in your RFPs. Ask us how we plan to help you, not just how we plan to deliver features or what feature sets we have or what our latest bells and whistles are, but how are we going to help you? How are we going to work with your organization to achieve the goals that you are trying to work against? And why are we different to the other vendors that are out there? If you do that, then you can take the conversation beyond just focusing on cost and features. And you can start looking at real business value, which ultimately, in my opinion, is exactly what you should be looking to achieve.